Hey everybody, welcome. I'm Daniel G. Garza, and this is another episode of Put It Together Conversations. Thank you for joining us. Welcoming all of you folks watching us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. Feel free to be part of the conversations. As soon as my guest gets on, you can start sharing. So anything that resonates with you, makes sense to you, please join, ask your questions, and I'll make sure that she sees them. I want to start by introducing our guest today, Jessie May Wolfe. Jessie May Wolfe is a brave heart leader, speaker, and visionary. She empowers team creatives, entrepreneurs, and executives around the world using the HeartRise Method. HeartRise was born out of her genuine curiosity to understand how interconnected we all are. Her extensive experience in the fashion, publishing, communication, startup, and wellness industries inspired the creation of what is now known as the HeartRise Method. From wellness to tech, real estate, nonprofit, advertising, and media, HeartRise disrupts company culture, offering a fresh take on how heart-powered leadership. Jessie May is building bridges with the language of the heart. And with that, let me bring her on to the set. Hello, Jessie May. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being here.
I'm so grateful. I'll take one of those free hugs. Come on.
For the folks that follow the show know that I try to wear a different t-shirt for each one of my guests. As I was picking the shirt for you, I picked the free hug for you. So it kind of matched your energy.
Well, I am so honored and I'm so grateful and I'm receiving it. So let's give a big hug to everyone watching too. I'm so thankful to be here. You are such a big, beautiful heart. And I'm so thankful to be here sharing this space with you. So thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. You travel quite a bit. You have different places that you are. Where, if I may ask, where are you now?
Absolutely. Currently, I am in Montreal, which is my hometown, where I'm from originally. LA is where I reside, and I have been for the last 12 years. And then basically during and since the pandemic, I sort of came back anticipating a month or two. You know, Canada felt a little safer and flashed to a year. And I've been pretty stationed here, but my plan is to head back soon to LA. And I do typically, under normal circumstances, I travel a lot. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So for those of you who follow the show know that I like to share how I meet my guests. Jessie May and I met on, and I've talked about this on several shows, on Lunch Club, which I have been a member of Lunch Club now for about November, December, January, February, March, April, about 6 months. I started right before Halloween. So for those of you that don't know about Lunch Club, I'll make sure to share my personal link so you can join. But it's a network where they match you up with people based on your likes and your interests. And in one of those, Jessie May and I connected. Now you have the choice to pick people that you already know, but what's the point in meeting with people you already know? So we were connected and we ended up talking for quite a bit that day.
We did. It was just such a beautiful, I remember my first image of you and you had the chakra blanket behind you and the colors and just your energy. And I was like, wow, who is this radiant light beam? So yeah, it was one of those awesome connects right away. And I thoroughly enjoyed our convo there. And then you shared about the podcast and I was like, bring it, I'm down. So yeah.
And one of the coolest things about Lunch Club is they set you up for like a 45-minute conversation. And so that you don't have to, like, if it's kind of like a date. If you feel uncomfortable after 45 minutes, you're like, okay, well, I'm done. I've done my part. But every once in a while, I have the privilege of just connecting with people that are amazing like you. And there's this beautiful energy connection. More so, there are people like you that I feel like I've known for a long time, even though we've never met, which is actually kind of cool. Before we move on into your personal Put It Together story, can you tell us a little bit more about the HeartRise Method?
Absolutely. So HeartRise is a method that I developed. It's really my life's work. So it will tie in and I'll share more in depth with the story when I get into that. But essentially it is an emotional intelligence training method. It's a meditative method, but it's a more active practice. So it helps to cultivate and build emotional resilience. And it's a practical 4-step method so that, for example, when situations arise, such like the pandemic, where we've been in such high demand because everyone's been so disoriented by all the shifts around us and everything that has just been so just such a radical year of change and transformation, and just so much that has confronted us. It's really an opportunity to go within. You know, we hear so much about the answers live within, and there are so many tools and resources, but it's a really practical, science-based modern method that also meets ancient wisdom. So it's sort of a, you know, it's a really accessible method that teaches people how to retrain your brain with the power of your heart, so you can cultivate a connection with that very energy. As I talk about, the vibes don't lie. You can really plug into that power source as an intelligent source to guide you and to lead you. So it's your best compass, it's your engine, it's resilient, it's strong. So it really helps you to show up as your best person in the midst of chaos or anything that's around you. And it also allows you to be creative and empowered and connected and all the things we need more of. So
what I really like about the movement is that it really taps into like your third chakra, your solar plex chakra. It's all about trusting your intuition and being committed to your own gut feelings. And a lot of us, I've heard this in several webinars and workshops that I've been part of. Social media and having the ability to just Google people and research people has disconnected us from that solar plex, that we don't trust our own gut feelings, that regardless of reviews and 5 stars, and sometimes your gut feeling goes, that may not be good for me, and you still jump into it. Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense. And the beauty is that it's really that connection with, and the heart is actually sort of the epicenter. And when it connects to, because the heart, even in terms of the chakras, when you look at it, it's the epicenter, right? It's the center of our being. And so when you learn how to harness that and you connect it with third chakra, as you're saying too, which is our power source, where we commit, where we have conviction and we trust, as you said, it really helps to empower us to feel more confident with those choices.
Sorry, hold on a second. I think I lost you. Hold.
Yeah, can you hear?
Keep talking while I fix the situation here.
Okay, you're good. Yeah, it really does help you to cultivate that trust, though, because to be able to trust ourselves is the best gift we can give ourselves. And, you know, there's so much noise out there. And like you said, between different reviews and so many different people's perspectives, and there's just a lot of noise out there. So it really does help you to harness a sense of inner guidance that is really empowering. And so it connects, the heart to, you know, solar plexus, which is the power center, and all of the others as well. It's the real core. So, yeah.
Awesome. That is so cool. So I want people to hear your story. So Jessie May Wolfe, tell us how you put it together.
Wow. Well, I will. It's quite the journey. It's really been my life's work. So one of the things I love to offer and I share, especially when I work with youth, you know, I believe in following the curiosity and leading with sort of being curious about what lights us up, what draws us, because so often we get into that should narrative, or so many of the external, as you were even saying, with like, even down to reviews, it's sort of like, what path should I take? So I was very curious as a young child, and that kind of guided me, and I was creative and I was passionate. So I was multi-passionate, in fact. So I studied a lot of different things. And I say that just to give context, because I think it's important to allow ourselves to follow all of those different threads. Because for me, HeartRise has, and I'll get to the whole coming together, but there's so many different paths that I did experience, and different, even just from entrepreneurship to being creative, to my writing, to my design, to working with others. And all of those threads have really come together into what is now born as HeartRise. So I started really studying communication because I loved working with others. And I had a minor in film studies because I loved film, and I was really drawn to, you know, sort of telling stories. So the documentary aspect. From film, I went into photography. I went into design. I was doing graphic design, and all of these threads are now woven into what is HeartRise. So I share these because these pieces in the putting it together are really the weave that is now the full emancipation, the full expression of what HeartRise is, because I've had the experience of being in so many different environments and traveling so much and being in different industries. So from design, and marketing and design, I moved into fashion. I had my own clothing line for many years. And so and colors, I was always very drawn to color. I was, called a color therapist because of the way I would put colors together. So I was so drawn. That's why I remember my first image of you. And, it allows us to recognize and spot, patterns and sort of observing things in our life and following those threads, but not being too fearful if it doesn't seem like an obvious path, because everything, isn't super prescribed if we want to really cultivate that sense of purpose. If we really want to feel that compass within, if we want to feel true to who we are, we have to explore, we have to stay curious. So I really did that. And so from those different pieces of the creative path, so moving into, and I had my clothing line for many years, 2003 to 2008, I had the collection, it was my name. So there was a definite identity crisis when I was shifting gears, because Jessie May is my middle name. So it was Jessie May, come out and play. And I had the butterfly and all the colors. And I'm going to have to get you some of those old school tees, because they were some really fun. I mean, I had Splash, Dream, Ride Love and Harvest Hope on t-shirts, and just, all kinds of fun hoodies and sweaters. And it was just a lot of fun. But the aspect of the industry, the sort of rat race of the industry, was very draining and exhausting. And so what I loved was the creative aspect. I loved doing all of the sort of the connecting with others and the creation of the collection, but the sort of the continuous cycle of you're never done. You're continuously putting out, a new collection, and you're always, having to jump ahead and follow the buyer's leads. And there was just a lot of shoulds. And so from that place, that's when sort of the real core, the seeds of the beginnings of HeartRise really started, because I shifted from all of the creative endeavors, so from film to photography to design, marketing, and then the clothing line, into coaching. It was like exit stage left, and this is a big turn she's taking. And, and I really sort of moved into another space. And that experience, while it was scary, it often, when there's fear, there's something to lean into. There's more to the story. There's it's the willingness to be curious. And so I leaned in, because when I was watching and observing, what I loved most, and that deeper vision within, was the connecting with others. And, I would do the coterie trade shows, and people would come and find me on Pier 92. They'd be like, there's her laugh, go get it. Like, she's there, let's go, like, it's safe base there, because, the fashion industry can be a little bit intense. It can be a little bit of a masquerade in terms of, a lot of not as authentic maybe as, and I love fashion, don't get me wrong, but the sort of safe sense of self, there's a lot of sort of putting it on. And so people would come to my booth and they would take a big exhale and they would relax. It was kind of like, home base. So I was watching that and observing that and loving working with the buyers and connecting with the people. So I was really observing all of these threads, and I knew that I loved working with others. And I had other chapters along the way, like working as a camp counselor, being the oldest of 4, being a mentor to youth, and taking kids out on canoe trip, and loving children, and, really enjoying the narrative of kind of working with others and being in community with others, and talking about inspirational ideas, and being that person when someone had a fun idea to be like, go for it, so I loved that aspect. So when I learned about coaching at the time, life coaching, it was actually one of my best friends who had sent me an article, and she's actually a comic. A shout out to Jess Solomon, one of my best friends, who's an amazing comedian. And she had sent me an article. This was many, many moons ago, many years ago. And I remember reading about it and thinking, wow, how cool that I could just be a kind of cheerleader for people's dreams and visions and inspiration and entrepreneurship. And yet I was deep in the thick of like Jessie May, the collection. So it was my name and my identity. And it was like, oh, like, how am I going to, pivot here? And I took the leap though, and I followed that thread. And even though it wasn't so much the coaching program that I did that was so extraordinary, it was okay, but it was that I gave myself permission to completely switch gears, to say, you know what? I want to lean in here. There's something more for me here, to work with others, to inspire others. And so the coaching gave way to my curiosity around the heart, because what I noticed is when I was working with others and coaching others, there was a healing piece that I found very interesting, because I noticed that the best ideas and the most visionary thought leaders and entrepreneurs even had this sort of deep passion, right? This like aliveness, this vitality. And I wanted to tap into that. And what I noticed was the people that were the most blocked, even if the ideas were grand, it was harder to execute. And I was like, okay, I'm onto something here. So again, following the curiosity and being really intrigued about what was that and leaning in and then allowing the curiosity to lead. And I studied with some of the best teachers. Marianne Williamson was one of my, utmost, and she still is a mentor and teacher and friend. And she's been a big supporter of HeartRise for anyone who knows her work. And she's been a huge, proponent for A Course in Miracles and a teacher. So I studied with her. I did lots of different trainings as well. I studied Reiki. So I went into the energetics. I studied shamanism. I got trained in certain modalities. Some of them were a little more woo-woo, so to speak. And then I also moved into the space of, and I'll talk about woo-woo in a sec, because woo-woo is good. We just get very heady about woo-woo, and actually there's a lot more to it. So I wanted to ground the woo-woo with some science, because I knew that I was being called to work with the everyday people and not only the people that were sort of tapped into whatever that woo-woo was. So I wanted to be able to make it accessible, because I knew I was onto something. So again, following the curiosity, following my heart, following the same light that was drawing me. And I got into the emotional piece, the heart piece. And I really noticed that the most visionary and the most passionate and the most active in their execution were those that were just, I refrained from using fearless, because we all have fear, but they were courageous. They were brave. They were bold. They leaned into that fear and they owned it. They led with that conviction, that trust, that power, that passion. And even if it was scary, they went for it. And there was something to that. So I started to learn more about emotional intelligence and the heart, and I was very drawn. And I noticed mind, body, spirit is often how the wellness world is described. And I was like, come on, where's the heart in this mix? And I really kind of got into understanding and wanting to unpack, where does the heart live in this? Not just the physiological heart. I was like, there's a whole other intelligence that a lot of people are missing. And I was picking up on it. So I started to study more about the heart, and some of the ancient traditions like shamanism and even Reiki a little bit taps in, but to the heart space specifically. And so I ended up getting trained. Actually, one of the original founders of HeartMath, which is the leading edge research institute on the science of the heart, was onto my work, and he too recommended, and several of them said, come and do the training, because I was referencing a lot of the science, which is really powerful, which is what brings me to the vibes. Because I knew there was something going on with the vibes. I knew I was leaning in and listening and sort of paying attention to, even when I was working with buyers, it's like some buyers I'd be excited to see, and other buyers I was like, oh, this is going to be a long one. Like you could feel it. They'd come in and they'd bring the heavy, or they'd come in and they'd be super excited, and it was a beautiful energy. And there was something to that energy, which sounds woo-woo, but I was like, there's more to it. So the heart became this really powerful resource that I knew had more to learn, like more to reveal. So studying the science of the heart, the electromagnetic field of the heart, understanding there was this invisible power source that we were all aware of, and yet not really taught how to harness or how to work with. So that got me really excited. And the heart was the epicenter. So that's sort of, and there's so much more I can say, but that really was like the earthing of HeartRise and the birthing, if you will. And then from that, I started to recognize what it was to move through the heart and not to be blocked. Because I'll just say this piece, the fear that a lot of people are held and tied by and bound to, where they won't lean in, right, and put it to, and take those next steps. It's contracted energy. And when you learn how to lean in and move through the fear and release it, you can access it as fuel. So that really excited me. It was contracted energy versus expanded and inspired energy, and that fuel, that fuego, that juiciness, that aliveness that allows us to birth the vision that we all have. And we all have a signature heart song. So anyway, that's a little,
So before we continue, because I have some questions for you. Everybody watching, you are watching Putting Together Conversations. I'm your host, Daniel G. Garza. Today we are talking to founder of HeartRise Movement, Ms. Jessie May Wolfe, and we're talking about energy, a little bit of woo-woo, and how to tap into your heart. So stick around. Make sure that if you are watching us on any of the 4 channels, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter, ask your questions and be part of the conversation. We invite you to join us. There's a couple of different things that I want to tap into, because first of all, the life coaching. I'm so excited because I just signed on to get my life coaching certification, because I've been doing spiritual coaching for a long time, but I wanted to get to that next level. One thing that I've learned is that our personal experiences are so valuable when we're trying to guide other people in there. Because some people say, if you're too damaged, can you really help somebody else? But I feel like whether your experiences have been positive or negative, they still help us in having that energy connection with somebody else. And then kind of, I mean, obviously you can't pick up somebody and walk them through the tunnel in the darkness, but you can shine the light on them and have them come towards you. Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense. And I would even say, to add to that, and I love what you're sharing, that it's about having had the experience gives us more compassion to be able to be in a space where we can be held and heard, because really true healing and the capacity to be a good coach or a support or a mentor or to hold space for anyone is to be able to feel that compassion and that empathy, to be able to, for someone to feel safe enough to tap into, first of all, parts of themselves that maybe they haven't wanted to look at, because it's really hard to get to the vision and the purpose and all the good stuff if there's a lot of junk that you're still holding, right? And that's what I think a lot of people miss. So I would say that it's super important to have that connection with the person, and the more life experience you have, the more you can bring to the table. I mean, I pull out different tricks in each, it's amazing in different sessions, or I'm always guided by the room that I'm working with or the individuals or the group. Things will come through that don't always, like even just being with you now, it's like the pieces that come through are always related to the engagement and the experience. And of course, yes, there's a methodology, but there is so much about the uniqueness of each coming together that allows for that to happen.
Yeah, because I found that it was only in the last couple of years that I really took charge of my career and what I wanted to be when I grew up. And
right.
Obviously, it took me till I was 49 to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up.
Right.
So for anybody watching, regardless of your age, you still have dreams and goals you can go after. So keep going. But I realized, and I've shared this story in other platforms, that my mom passed last year. And there were a lot of phobias and fears and blockages that she had that by nurture I picked up. It wasn't nature, it was nurture that I picked up and took on as my own, her fears, her phobias, her resentments, her anger, whatever it was. When she passed, I had to sit down and meditate on it and talk to her as she was leaving this earth and say, can you take all these with you? Because I don't need that protection anymore. And that allowed me to grow professionally and then personally even more. Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense. And in that too, and that's so beautiful, that when we recognize that a lot of the things that we believe or that we think are things that we've picked up from along the way, it's amazing how when we give ourselves permission to start looking at them, that we can feel what's underneath. And that's where I feel the heart plays such an integral role, because it's like giving ourselves permission to say, I've been hurting, or I've been holding that for a long time, and to just say it's okay to feel it and release it. Because when we move into the heart space, instead of holding it in the mind or the programming, which is often the faulty programming we pick up from the faulty nurturing, it's not often, it's unbeknownst to them, right? The parents pass it on because that's what they knew, and that's what so it's generational. But when we start to become aware of it, and then we do the healing because we feel what's really going on inside, then we can release it. And that's so much of how the method works. So that totally speaks to me. And
so there could be two sides to your career path. It was like you're trying to find your space and kind of going from one thing to another, trying to figure out who you were. And then there's the other side of the coin where it's like you were gathering experiences to get you to where you were. Yeah. Do those both make sense, and do they both fit you?
They really do. And I think, when in certain instances, like probably the greatest challenge I think for me was when I had to shift gears from like having built this like successful, and we could have a whole talk about what success means really, because there's outside measured success, and then what does it really mean for us? But, I had built sort of a successful career with my name brand as the clothing line. So that was a very big identity crisis to stay, okay, I'm just going to really, like I said, shift gears and go into coaching from, and I had built it up by the end, we had over 400 stores selling the line and 6 showrooms. And it was really not an obvious, like, oh, I'm just going to like check out, So, and plus with fashion, you're always working on one collection that's like, you're a year ahead, you're a season ahead, you're selling the next, you're always like, you're forecasting. So it wasn't super obvious to say, I'm just going to pause. but I had to really say, Jessie May is going to take a nap kind of thing, because it was like my name, and it was all of these things that I was being confronted with. So I really believe that, the less we overthink it and the more we lean in, and this is why I became so passionate about the heart, because I really noticed that there was a different intelligence, a different guiding source, that when I would listen to it, I was being led in a more important way that felt true, versus like the shoulds. The should would have told me, keep going, you're going to get there, stay on the fashion train. But I wasn't fulfilled anymore. And I took what I had learned. And so I think staying aware, and as you described beautifully, staying reflective, but not overthinking, but just being able to sort of check in with ourselves. How does this feel? Like, that's a more important question than what do I think?
Yeah. How do you, because it's so different, especially during the lockdown. I think a lot of people thought during the lockdown, it's like, oh, I'm going to be alone. I can tap into me. But I think we were more connected to what was going on around us. But how do you stop the noise? How do you,
that's a good question.
How do you go into you and go,
yeah,
okay, Jessie May, what should we do in this moment?
Yeah. Well, the method itself really is a resource to do that. So, I can speak about the 4 steps because they really guide you through how that works. But I will say it's easy to buy into the noise when we're not wanting to deal with what's going on inside. So that's where the pandemic got caught people off guard. They're like, oh, I'm just going to deal with my stuff or go into my own little world. But actually, it was easier to subscribe to the fear mongering and all the news and the noise, because so many were ill-equipped at how to deal with their own malaise, as we say en français, but like their own discomfort or their own unrest, their own pain, and the healing that needs to happen. And so this practical method, which is really practical. So for the busy-minded or the ones that are very much in their head, HeartRise is a practical resource to plug in. And I want to just offer this too, because the word heart can be very confronting for a lot of people, because we haven't been taught how to trust it, that it actually is an intelligent source. So I've also been debunking so much of like the programming around heart in and of itself. The fact that I'm bringing HeartRise into corporate culture is revolutionary to me. I think it's exciting to think that companies are open to a practice that involves and includes and is based around heart intelligence. That's progressive to me. So I feel that what's starting to happen, and I think, to go within to come to your question, is we really need to learn how to build that relationship with our heart, because it's where the wisdom lives. And so much of that is we have to give ourselves permission to feel all of the uncomfortable feelings, not just the ones that are comfortable, because that's where, the growth edge lives, when we're really willing to get uncomfortable and to move through it. So the 4 steps help you with those, with how to move through things that you're blocking, that you don't want to look at.
I had several clients after a couple of months of lockdown come back and tell me, it's like, I didn't know I had this many issues. And I'm like,
oh yeah,
actually you, because I've been working with them for a while. I'm like, actually we've had the conversation about these issues. You were just too busy to give them the time necessary.
And I love it. Makes so much sense. And I love that you describe that, because busy, one of the biggest challenges I see out there is that we revere busy. We bow down to busy. When we say we're busy, we sort of think it's this like big fancy thing. And actually it's so dysfunctional that we've been taught or programmed to think of that as grand, or even to almost like excuse ourselves from dealing with our truth, because it's like, I'm busy, right? And that used to work, pre-pandemic, maybe people could masquerade around that, but actually busy is like, I don't want to deal with my stuff, really, right? And actually the truth is, right? Yeah. And it's like, we're going to come right home and we're going to feel right through, and it's going to be uncomfortable, but that's where you grow. That's how you expand. And when you have tools to lean in and listen, it's amazing what's possible. So I find it an exciting time in that way, that we really, it's the busier you are, or the more, I love this idea too, that analysis is emotional paralysis. The more we overanalyze and the more we head trip, we call it head trip in the land of HeartRise. Like the more you head trip, there's some stuff you're not wanting to deal with, right?
Yep. Yeah. And remind everybody, for everybody watching, we're halfway through our show. This is Put It Together Conversations. I want to thank you for watching us. If you're watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter, please join the conversation. Post your questions or your comments, and I'll make sure they pop up on the screen. We are talking with Jessie May Wolfe, founder of HeartRise Movement, and we're talking about confronting our own personal busyness and how we deal with it. Yeah, just this morning, I usually have a noon and 5 o'clock show, and the noon had to be rescheduled. So I didn't have a morning show. And normally they're about 10:30 in the morning. I start taking a shower, get ready, but there was nothing to get ready. And I was like, I even told Christian and my partner, I was like, I feel like I need to like create some chaos. Like I need something to worry about because I don't have anything to worry about right now. So I went back to bed and took an hour nap, and I was like, I'll just rest. But I figured that that's what my body really just needed. And my inner, I have this other personality inside. I have my warrior. He's the warrior. He runs around through all the departments in my head going, is everything ready? Is everything ready? Is everything ready? And today I was like, you know what? You have the morning off. Go rest. But he doesn't quit. He keeps running around.
Oh, I feel you.
Because I found this is with my spiritual coaching. Every time I have a client that I'm working with and we're working through their stuff, there's always a bit of me that comes out. It's kind of like in my recovery, whenever we did a 4th step, it's every time somebody shares with me, I share with them.
Right. What
have you discovered about you as you went into life coaching?
That's such a great question. I just realized how much I didn't know, and it was really like so much of what I thought I knew, so much of what I had learned was worth staying, again, curious about. And because I grew up being really a lot more sort of certain about things or taught to be certain. So I was still very curious, but there was like and I talk again a lot about the head and the heart, but it was like I was way more sort of headstrong, and I was very much in my heart, but the connection wasn't as strong, so they were like battling it out. And what I found was the more I would let go, which was uncomfortable for who, busy mind, that warrior, that constant, for me, it was more of mine was a little more of, I grew up with a dad who was like, take the bull by the horn. So it was more of a sort of, I thought I knew what was up, and I've softened, like with time, I've just become much more accepting and just really open to really realize how much we all have so many different ways of seeing the world. Like the way I see the world, the way everybody is just, and having, traveled as much as I have and worked with people from, every different walk of life, every different age. I mean, we bring HeartRise to, we work with everyone from inner city kids to like corporate CEOs to, we're actually talking about doing a program with the elderly right now. It's amazing and so different age demos, but and you brought it up before, how there's an energy that connects us, but I had that knowing, and yet this idea that I love to say we all know each other by heart. There was that deeper knowing, but it had to be me really like continuously letting go of, even I remember when I had to let go of the clothing line, it was really an identity crisis. Like I said, I had built this thing up, and even though I didn't want to keep doing it, it was very difficult to let it go fully. Because I had invested 6-7 years in it, and it was like, wow, am I really just going to like put it to bed, when it was my name. So it was just the like really surrendering, this continuous surrender. And I've had so many of those challenges and experiences. I've had radical loss. I mean, I lost my dad who 8 years ago. And he was very much my biggest cheerleader, but also my greatest challenge in a lot of ways, because he was really headstrong, very much in his ego. He believed so much in me, but he also was his way or the highway, and that was what I grew up under. And he was like, you can do it, go get it. But like, I was this kind of free spirit, rebel kid, did really well in school, but like grew up in Montreal, was going out to the bars and like the like popular party girl, but like still killing it at school, it was like to reconcile. I just it was letting go of a lot of these sort of shoulds and the have tos and the knowing it all, and like what freedom that gave. So it's just been like at each juncture, you know, and getting into the coaching fully was like a real mirror. It was like, if I want to help others, I got to help myself. So I had to do a lot more healing work. I've done recovery work. I've done my own sort of real personal, like getting raw and uncomfortable, and, you know, just really unpacking so much of my own malaise, like a lot of the hurts that I was holding and a lot of the stuff that I'd picked up from having that experience, just, you know, from both sides on the, you know, growing up, you pick up so much, and just in your environment, there was so much that didn't necessarily fit with me and who I was. You know, I loved so many of the core values that I was raised with, but I really was curious to travel and to get out there in the world and experience people and learn new ways. So there was something driving me. And like, the more I let that lead, the more I could let go of all these sort of ideas that I had picked up along the way. And it was just such a freedom to let go of the certainty and dive more fully into the curiosity. And that's just been a continuous journey. And I never, you know, I think if anyone thinks, and this goes for me just first and foremost, but if we think we've got it all figured out at any point, like, it's usually a bit of a problem. And I used to have some of those ideas. I thought I had it all going on, you know, at certain stages. And, you know, the more you let that go, first of all, the easier life gets, the more you can call in support. And that's the other thing I would say, asking for help. You know, it's often the strongest among us that have a hard time saying, you know, I need some help. And that was a real tough one for me, because I was very like, I got this. It's like, newsflash, none of us have got this. We're all just doing the best we can. And what freedom that brings, you know, to just accept that. So
there's something you brought up a couple of times, and I find it really interesting, because I'm going through that at the moment too, is our brand identity. And
right.
I hear a lot of people that I work with and people that I know, they're like, no, I'm not that. Like, I'm just working on my career. I'm
right.
not but I'm a believer that we all have our brand identity. Either I am the studious one, I am the partier, I am the nerd, whatever it is that you put yourself whatever label, that's your brand. I mean, I forever and ever thought of myself as a workaholic. I tell my friends, I'm a workaholic. That's what I do. I work all the time. And when I don't, I fall apart. I do know that I fall apart a little bit. How is there a line, a division between Jessie May Wolfe person and Jessie May Wolfe founder? Like, you know what I mean? Like, do you know how to separate them, or are they like fused together?
I love that question, Daniel. You asked the best questions. I will say it's interesting, because when I really got into HeartRise, there were literally two camps in my community, where some were like, you are the brand, it's Jessie May, you know, and then it was like, but you've created this method that's so powerful in HeartRise. And I was very sure that it was HeartRise movement, because what I had developed and what Jessie May, and I'll get into the person versus the brand, because that's where the distinction happens. It was very clear that what had come through me, which was this inner guidance, which was what HeartRise, like, it was very clear what I was doing. And I was seeing how that was a practice that I developed, but I wanted it to be, it's medicine, it's a method, it's teachable. And we now actually, through the pandemic, I've done 2 leadership trainings, which is unbelievable. When I go back and reflect now, I'm like, wow, that's pretty crazy that I ran that, but it was beautiful. That said, the movement is so much bigger than me, the person, and the quote unquote Jessie May, the brand. So while the name is cute and catchy as a brand, Jessie May Wolfe, the person, is really who I am. And as a founder, I am the founder. And HeartRise movement is really the brand and the heartbeat of what the culture and what Jessie May has created. Now, Jessie May as a person, it is my name, and it's interesting because May is my middle name. And so, you know, I have a lot of fun nicknames: Sunshine, Mama Fuego, you name, I mean, I got all kinds of fun names, but Jessie May is really my spirit. It's the essence of who I am. So May, being my middle name, when someone coined it for me years ago, as sort of a fun name, when I was looking for the name for the collection, it really suited it was almost like my spirit animal. I was like, of course, that sounds and feels like me. So that's me, the person, and I am the founder, but I embody who I am. And I feel that when people are, because you do see this a lot, especially now, because people and their brand, it's like, what's the distinction? So what I will say is that there's consistency through both. Obviously, I have my personal life, and then there's Jessie May as I hold space within the community. but so much of what we've created, and that's the nature of what HeartRise is, in that it's a heart-based practice. We really are tribe, we're family, we're community. I mean, my leaders are in fact, today I just had one of our leaders over with her kids, and like we were having a dance party, it's like family. So, I do have my downtime where I need, in fact, I said, why do you guys stay for supper? She's like, you need to rest, you have the podcast, so there's that level of respect. Shout out to Katrina, I love you. It's amazing. There is that level of respect. And it's so much of what we practice and what I teach and what HeartRise is about is having those healthy boundaries and that balance. So I will say that Jessie May, the founder and the person, has a sense of what is good for me. And the more I learn and the more I surrender and the more I practice, the more clear those distinctions become. But it is, in this day and age, can be quite I've seen it because I work with a lot of people who have difficulty separating the two out. And it's something that I continue to watch for. What I will just add that I think is important for anyone watching, we don't want to get too tied to an identity, because then it can sometimes lead so much so that we don't let ourselves be who we are. And I think being who you are is more important. If it aligns with an identity or a brand, great, but making sure to let that truth, that voice, that sense of self be defined first. And then if it aligns with brand and the two are cohesive, that's a beautiful thing. But sometimes it's, like I see some people that have their sort of like alter ego, and that's great. And that's a beautiful thing. Paris Hilton is a good example. She's got the Paris Hilton thing, and then she's very real. She's actually, as a human being, is very, so that's just as an example that, very public one that a lot of people know. But I would say that Jessie May, the heart of who I am, and the brand are very much one and the same. But the key for me is the boundary piece. And that's been an ongoing challenge, because I love what I do so much, and it is my heart and it is my family and it is my community, that sometimes it's hard to like turn it off. So that's been my greatest challenge, and I'm getting better. So
one thing that I've discovered, not just with myself, but with clients that I work with, is they all come in with this, I know how to set boundaries. I put everybody in their place. I mark my lines. And I'm like, but where's the boundaries with yourself? Do you know how to do that? Because when you close off those walls, you're left inside with yourself. And sometimes we're so bad with ourselves. Like, we have higher expectations for ourselves. Yeah. I'm guilty. Like, I'm looking around like, I'm Daniel Garza, and I'm horrible with personal boundaries. I work on it daily, and I have to, like, okay, I woke up at 6 today, and I've been working, and it's 11 o'clock at night. I think I can call it a day now. Like, you've done as much as you can,
right,
before you go insane. But it is it's a fine line that we walk sometimes, and it's so hard. But here we are. Like today, I'm comfortable that this is my last interview for the day. I'm gonna cook dinner afterwards and relax. So that's gonna be good. For everybody watching, this is Putting Together Conversations. I'm your host, Daniel G. Garza. My guest today is founder of HeartRise Movement, Jessie May Wolfe, and we're talking about boundaries and personal brands and just identifying yourself. If you are watching us on any of the 4 channels, please join the conversation or make a comment. If you're watching this on a replay, you can still comment and add to the conversation. I'll make sure that Jessie May gets any information you leave behind. Part of our show is we like to ask for, where's my banner? I just lost my banner. There we go. Is some words of wisdom for our followers and listeners. So Jessie May Wolfe, what words of wisdom would you like to share?
Yeah, well, I love that. And actually, the 4th step of the method is all about heart wisdom and flow. So that really speaks to me. And I would say one of the number one things that I think this particular pandemic, and it relates very much to HeartRise too, but that I feel is so important, is what can we do for others? I think we're being called to really, if anyone is like seeking or searching or wanting to find their way. And what I really noticed, as I talked about at the top of the show, the curiosity, but staying curious in how we can connect and staying connected to each other, I think is so important. So I feel that so many of my greatest lessons have come from engagement and connection and being really open to being in my heart with others, right? So being vulnerable, asking for help, being of service, being in community with, and beyond just the comfort zone. So I feel like that's a really important thing that's starting to happen in bigger ways. And the pandemic has challenged that in a lot of ways, because you see how people have shut down, but it's also exposed so many of the the shadows and all the dark, like the stuff that we need to look at, the painful parts and places that we all hold inside. So remembering that we belong to each other is so essential. And, and being honest about our pain so that we can get honest about our healing is so essential. That's huge. And that relates to me as well, as far as the we all know each other by heart piece, because I really believe that. So when we lead with more of a heart piece rather than the know it all, which is more the head, and coming from a place of, compassion and heart, and sharing from our heart what we're feeling, or connecting with someone, appreciating someone, or asking how we can help, and coming from a more heartfelt place, building those bridges of connection. That's where so much of the magic happens. Because I really believe that the way that we are evolving as our collective humanity is together. We need each other more than ever. I mean, this pandemic has just hit all of us, right? Without getting into the details of that. I mean, no one person is unaffected by this. And so we're being shown how interconnected we are. And I could say so much more about that, but I believe that this connection piece, and really remembering that, and how can we connect more with others beyond just our little comfort zone and our little microcosm, is so essential, because there's so much wisdom that we can find from just presencing one another, and what we can learn by listening and paying attention.
That's where we go. I don't want to go over aloha. I want to make sure that we know that we have viewers all the way out in Hawaii watching us. Dealing with Aloha podcast is on Instagram, so make sure go check it out on Instagram. I've been on the show; it's pretty amazing. So go check it out.
Nice.
Now, one thing I want to make sure that folks understand, because we've been talking about the heart a lot throughout the episode, and one of the big things that I hear all the time is no, I can't let go of my heart. I can't open my heart. I've been hurt before. I suffered, and it's my one thing. But in the way that I work is that the heart is where we listen, is where the information comes through. If I put it through my head first, I've dissected it, broken it down, and it no longer has the effect that it's meant to. But if I listen with my heart, I can feel where it's coming from. I can grasp what the person's intentions were, as long as it's open. My question to you is at what point in your life were you able to open your heart and say, okay, it is, I don't know if this is going to make sense, but when I listen to people's, whether it's constructive criticism or just being mean,
right?
It's not my responsibility on how they delivered the message. It's just how I receive it and how I process it.
Right.
But it took me a long time to figure that out.
Right.
Does that make sense to you?
Oh, it makes so much sense. And I think that, the distinction too, of heart, we think of the heart as sort of this engine, or this sort of, this really powerful compass that can be attuned to, and I like to use the word vibes, but the vibrational wisdom, right? There's an electromagnetic field. There is something invisible that we can sense and pick up, which who, or the busy brain doesn't like to acknowledge or even respect, because it's not calculatable. It's not measurable in the same way that, we've been taught to understand things, or the linear way. So it's a little more abstract. So therefore it's easy to just say, oh, that's a lot of BS, or it's woo woo. But actually, when we start to really sense and pick up on more than what is just really even, a good example is you walk into a space, and obviously now it's a little bit different, but I'm really noticing how much more sensitive people are now, especially, right, as we're sort of slowly waking back up and coming back out into the world, as we're readjusting to what is it going to be like post-COVID. It's a good time to be really sensing and feeling and attuning to. And so that the heart really is so essential in that role. And the only reason that we're so afraid of opening the heart is because we haven't been taught how to feel safely. So that comes back to also finding, for anyone watching, I would just say to find at least one person you feel safe enough to really open and share your heart with, because it has to, start slow and steady in ways that, because we haven't been taught, and, or the other beautiful thing, to write, but to be able to start expressing what's going on inside of us so that we can start to get curious. Because if we're not asking questions and we're not sensing or feeling, then this guy is like running nonstop, and it's super hyperactive, right? And a practical way to do that is just even by bringing hands to heart and practicing breathing. One of the tools that I encourage, and we actually have these morning Ignite Bites that people through the pandemic have been really loving. They're just 4 minutes of guided meditation to plug you in and just listen. And I tell people, even if they're not necessarily listening to the words that I'm sharing, they feel, which is why voice and sound and current is so powerful, because we can pick up so much in that way. So it's really important that we create those little mini ways that we can start to plug in and start to become familiar with a different kind of awareness, a different kind of intelligence, that we can start to say, maybe everything that I've been taught and everything that I think, maybe I can take a step back. One of my favorite expressions, and it's often described in meditation, is don't believe everything you think. Now that is holla confrontational for who. It's like, what? Come again? Like, how would we not want, of course we're going to believe everything we think because it's what we think. But imagine we could take a step back. And that's sort of the premise and the starting point for most meditation. But where we go with HeartRise, which is uncomfortable for many because they haven't tapped in on the regular or haven't been taught how, is just to start dropping in. And it can be easy just by breathing and just softening and noticing, like, are you really tense? How are you holding the energy in your body? And if you can just start to ease into that space, it becomes easier and more natural, because it is our nature. We've just been programmed out of it and become very tense, and we're holding so much, this emotional constipation, because we haven't been taught how to feel through.
Yep. Oh my God, yes, because we grow up and we're taught to be just protective and don't let people in. Be careful who you give your heart to.
Yep.
Don't fall in love so easily. I mean,
Yep.
we all heard those. But I always feel like the heart is not about.
Don't trust your heart.
Yeah, but now that I get older, is like, I know where my heart is. I know it's in the good place. I know it's protected. As long as I don't let your negativity influence the way that I feel about things, I'm good. And your happiness, I may not be part of that, but I can appreciate it. I can respect it, which is so different than people are like, I gave them my heart. And I'm like, no, I think you just stop trusting yourself and believing in yourself, which is so different than. So for the folks out there watching, it's okay to protect your heart. It's okay to have a little bit of boundaries, but don't shut yourself off from the world. That is the worst thing you can do.
Absolutely. And I want to add one thing to that. I will say too, if something triggers you, or if you notice that something, that you do feel like you're being heavily affected by, like a loved person or just anyone around you or anything, those can be opportunities to go within, like you said, to start to identify. So, what is going on inside of me, right? So because every person is really a mirror for what we're, whatever we're dealing with. Often if we're judging or we have an idea or we've like attributed, like you said, oh, they broke my heart, or I gave my heart, or we have all these ideas, but there's something more for us to learn. And the more we can let it be an opportunity to go within, the more growth there is there for us.
Excellent. So we're down to about the last several minutes. Where can folks find you and how can they get in touch with you?
Yes, absolutely. Well, HeartRise movement is definitely the best way. And I would say too, our morning, as I mentioned briefly, but these little morning HeartRise meditations, people can text if they want. It's a really nice way for anyone in North America. And we've had people even external from, and we're going to grow it, but right now it's just available in North America. But there's a text option where you can get a little morning mini meditation and it's free. There's no catch. It's just a really nice way to kind of guide yourself and start the day heart smart, heart strong, grounded from a place within, so that you're not just whatever you open your phone, the first thing you see takes you off track, right? That's often what happens, right? The first text you get or the first thing you see in your feed, that sets the tone. So we give our power away so quickly. So beginning the day, grounding in is super important. Yes, the website is key. I also have a podcast, which you can check out. We do a lot of work with different groups and communities. So if you wanted to bring HeartRise in, we have amazing leaders now that are also helping support that. We work with companies, we work with schools, we work with creative communities. We were doing everything from a suicide prevention summit during the pandemic, which was so potent and powerful, to working with youth. working with love and relational dynamics. I mean, the heart is the epicenter, right? So it really serves and supports so many different, all of our relationships start with the heart. So building a relationship with your heart is the number one thing you can do to change your course, and to really empower your truth and to ground you in and to give you a sense of real guidance, and to also empower your relationships so that you have a stronger voice, so that you can feel more able to listen in relationship too. And there's so many ways to reach out. So the website has the most resources. And for anyone who is a coach or a healer or wanting to shift gears or curious to learn our leadership training, we're doing them once a year. Now, I did 2 through the pandemic, but that was a lot and it was amazing, but we're going to run them once a year. And the last thing I'll say is our foundation course. I know, I'm like, I got my eye on you. Woo! I would be honored, Daniel, seriously. It's really beautiful because the people who have been drawn to the practice are often coaches, entrepreneurs, healers, leaders, people who, because the thing is, HeartRise plays well with others, and it's just a powerful practice, and it's a language of heart that helps you access all of the other said teachings. So even if someone has another practice that they use, it just enhances it, it amplifies it, it gets you in your heart, and it deepens the practice, which is why when we bring it into schools, it deepens whatever they're learning because they're more in their heart. So they're more able to listen and be compassionate and voice what their truth is. So it really is next level. And I'm watching it happen at the corporate level. Is just, it's so radical. Last thing, for anyone who just wants to learn the practice, our foundation course is where it's at. It's a 6-week course online. You can do it digitally from your home comfort. We'll put all the links, or we can share, but that's really powerful. You can learn the 4 steps because it is a 4-step method. So you can take that noise. I like to say alchemize the noise. So when something triggers you, you witness it, you see it, you feel it, you free it, and you flow. That's just like fast, those 4 steps. But you alchemize the noise, you repurpose it, you take that fear and you move it into fuel, and take that pain and you move it into purpose. And obviously there's steps involved, but it's amazing what you can do when you really take that contracted energy, that pent up energy. Because when it's all stuck inside, that's when we're busy tripping, the head trip. When you take the head trip, you recognize, okay, that person pissed me off. I'm not going to give up my power and trip on them all day. Nuh-uh, I'm going to bring it home to the heart. Feel the discomfort, feel the pain, feel all of it, move through it, release it, and come back to flow. When you're in flow, that's the currency that connects us. It was that energy that I felt when we were connecting the first time. I was like, oh my, this is going to be a good connect. And, and we all have that, and it's an intelligent, creative source. So I am here to support all of you. I mean, we have a beautiful community. Last thing, our monthly Tribe Connect. I want you to be on the next one, Daniel, too. Okay. They're monthly. They're on the full moon. They are workshops. They're virtual, so you can join from anywhere in the world. We have people all over. The next one's all about alchemy and integrity. The last one is building trust bridges. Those are Tribe Connect monthly. And those are a few different ways.
Excellent. So for everybody watching, a lot, go check out the website. Get connected. If you are a newbie to working with your energy or an expert already on your own practice, there is still tough stuff to learn. And there's always new things out there. I'm getting a master intuitive workshop. I'm part of a class for the next 7 weeks, and I'm taking a tarot reading master class because I want to practice more on that. And then I'm doing my life coaching. So don't stop because you think you've reached that level. There's always more to grow. And on a personal note, I am so looking forward to you being in South California. I'm waiting for you to come visit.
Yeah.
We have to go get into some little trouble together.
We're going to get in trouble. And I told you, I've got a High on Heart t-shirt coming to you. So we are going to get, fall. Yeah, everybody's got to check that out. We're going to get some great shots together. Woo-hoo!
I got chills because for anybody that knows me knows that I love t-shirts. That's my one, well, other than tacos. Other than tacos, it's my next, it's the other vice. I love t-shirts. I collect them, and plus I get to wear them on the show, and I get to wear something different. So I'll be excited to get one of your t-shirts and wear them.
I'm excited for you to rock it too. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for taking the time to doing this. I really appreciate it.
You are so wonderful, Daniel. You're a gift. Really, your light, your heart radiate, and I'm sure everyone watching feels the same. So thank you. I just adore you. I'm grateful.
Thank you. Any last words before we go?
I would just say that, wherever you're at, remember that there is so much more to learn and to grow from, and you're not alone. We're in this together. And, that sounds cute to say, but I really mean that. We're all going through it. And when we lean in and we remember that, we're so much stronger. And yeah.
Thank you. All right. hang on in the green room. I'll be back for you in just 1 second. For everybody watching, thank you so much for joining us. If you're on Facebook, please join the pages, like us, look for us, and put it together conversations. If you're on LinkedIn, you can still follow me along. Make sure that you get the notices every week about the shows. If you're on YouTube, do me a favor. Would you scroll down, subscribe, and like this video? Make sure that you still join the conversation. I will make sure to find your comments and share them later on. And if you're on Twitter, do me a favor. Would you retweet this so other people can join it on the conversations? Again, I'm Daniel G. Garza. This is Put It Together Conversations. We'll see you folks next week. And remember, put it together.